Hello music lovers, welcome to the channel and thank you for checking out this video. In this one, I'm going to be talking about one of my all-time favorite bands, Iron Maiden. Got the chance to see them when their Legacy of the Beast tour came through Bristow, Virginia this summer. And man, what a great show. I'm watching this thing and I'm thinking to myself, this is the same classic lineup that I watched when I was a kid in 1985. The same guys. Not just that, they look pretty much the same and they sound the same, if not better. They even play in the same key that they did over 30 years ago. This is a band that's had no radio airplay. They're bigger than ever. What the hell is going on? How does this happen? But when you think about it, what's not to love about Iron Maiden? They have a killer mascot and some badass album covers. One even got them accused of worshiping the devil. Now that'll get you some fans quick. Their frontman is fearless. He not only pilots the band's jet, he fights zombies on stage. He kicked cancer in the ass and wrote a book too. In this video, we'll also find out why drummer Nico McBrain's nose is so flat. And someone needs to tell this guy to stop swinging his guitar around before he throws it at someone. Wait, he already did? All this madness and more coming up. So, recently I made some videos about bands who hit the 30, 40, 50-year mark, and they're shit shows. You know what I mean? They don't have the same lead singer. There's infighting between band members. They just don't look or sound the same as they did back in their heyday, and it's depressing. Well, I'm happy to report there is a band out there that has shattered all of that, and they actually have their shit straight, and that is Iron Maiden. As I said before, I went to go see them, and it's the same classic lineup. They look pretty much the same as they did back in the day. They don't wear the spandex, and that's a good thing, but they look pretty much the same. They sound the same, if not better than they did back in the day. And this is the most elaborate show that they have ever put on. And I'm going to talk about that as we go through the set. But they basically have their set broken down into three different realms. And the first realm is the realm of war. And they kick off the show with Aces High, one of my all-time favorite songs from the Power Slave album. So Bruce Dickenson comes leaping out onto the stage in his aviator outfit with this, World War II bomber replica hovering over the audience. And I'm just thinking to myself, man, if this is how the whole show is going to go, and if there's anything goes wrong here, some of us may not get out of here alive. And what's also interesting is that in real life, Bruce Dickenson is a licensed commercial pilot. He has actually flown the band around the world in a jumbo jet. As a matter of fact, if this tour is the most elaborate stage show that they've ever done, the one before this was the most elaborate one they have ever done in terms of carrying it out. And by that I mean it was the first time ever that a band and their crew and the equipment all flew on one jumbo jet being piloted by the lead singer. I mean, when does that ever happen? And one thing that you'll learn about Bruce Dickenson is that this is a guy who can do anything that he puts his mind to. He even wrote a book in 2017 called What Does This Button Do? Probably, not the best book title for an airline pilot, not something that you want to hear when you're on a plane maybe. It kind of reminds me of a scene that could have been out of Airplane. Remember that movie? Ladies and gentlemen, your pilot for this evening is lead singer, frontman for Iron Maiden, and author of the new book, What Does This Button Do? And then everybody going batshit crazy. But up next, we get Where Eagles Dare, the great leadoff track from their classic album, Peace of Mind. Love to see this one. And as with every song in this set, the scenery changes. We're still in the realm of war, but now it's in the Arctic. And, while I've talked a lot about Bruce Dickenson being a badass, we can't forget some of the other guys in this band who also helped to contribute to the great classic Iron Maiden sound. I'm talking about the dual guitar attack of Dave Murray and Adrian Smith. These guys are amazing. Don't get enough talk in the metal world. These are two great guitar players. I love the two guitars in harmony, that layered sound, the melodic sounds, just amazing. And let's not forget about Steve Harris on bass. I mean, after all, it's his band. You know, Steve Harris is like the Chris Squire of Iron Maiden. You know, he's been on every single album, every single tour. He writes most of the material. Nothing gets past Steve. You know, he is, I think, arguably the best bass player in metal history. You know, who else can you say is a better bass player? You know, let me know who they are, drop them down below. But as far as I'm concerned, he's on the same level as like a John Entwistle and a, you know, Chris Squire, Geezer Butler. Phenomenal bass player. Now, the next song is 2 Minutes to Midnight, one of my absolute favorites from the Power Slave album, an amazing album. And, you know, the lyrics to this song really spoke to me. You know, when I'm a kid, I'm a teenager listening to these lyrics, you know, the adults were looking at me like, you know, what are you listening to that stupid metal band? Probably worship the devil, and I'll get to that in just a bit. But it's easy to look at Maiden and look at them as a bunch of jack-offs. So, you know, I'm listening to these lyrics as a teenager, and it's teaching me about the value of life, the cost of war. And to me, 2 Minutes to Midnight was like a continuation of what Bob Dylan was talking about back in the 60s with his song, Masters of War. And I don't think heavy metal gets enough credit for some of the themes that they talk about, you know, war and drug use and that kind of thing. Of course, Maiden went into some other areas too. Steve Harris, the bass player who writes most of their lyrics, big into classical literature, so he brought that into. And in some ways, I felt like I was still in school, you know, when I was listening to Iron Maiden and reading the lyrics. Up next is The Klansman from the Virtual 11 album. Now, in the 90s, Bruce Dickenson left, and he came back by the end of the decade in 99. During that period, they made a couple of albums without him. They got this new lead singer called Blaze Bayley, and I really wasn't crazy about those albums. As a matter of fact, after Seventh Son of a Seventh Son in '88, I think it was when it came out, I kind of dropped off with Iron Maiden. I love their Killers to Seventh Son phase. To me, that's their sweet spot. Specifically, Peace of Mind, Power Slave, Somewhere in Time, Live After Death. Those albums are my favorites. Everything outside of that, not so much. So, you know, in terms of this set list, it covers, of course, stuff outside of that, and I understand it. But I got to give Bruce Dickinson credit for singing a song live that he was not a part of in the studio. It says a lot about Bruce. It says a lot about the songs, too. They're actually decent songs. They just needed a better delivery system. And I think that Bruce did a great job with these songs. Klansman's one of them, and there's going to be another one coming up. Up next, we have The Trooper from the Peace of Mind album. Great classic tune from them. And in this one, Eddie, their mascot, comes to life. And this time around, he is a zombified British soldier who gets into a sword duel with lead singer Bruce Dickinson. Now, it should be noted that in addition to flying planes and writing books, Bruce Dickinson has also had some time as a professional fencer, and he knows how to fence, he knows how to sword fight, and so this is just a lot of fun for him to get up there and ham it up with Eddie. Now, as for Eddie, you know, he is just as important to Iron Maiden as any of the band members. This is a mascot that started off as just a scary mask at the back of the stage behind the drummer, and it eventually evolved into, you know, album art, and he became a part of the live shows. Eddie has evolved over time, and he's always put into different situations. You know, he could be an Egyptian mummy on one album, a lobotomized mental patient on another, or even a futuristic cyborg like on Somewhere in Time. Now, I should mention that their album artwork is extremely important in bringing in new fans. And I should know because I was one of them. You know, I didn't have any friends that turned me on to Iron Maiden. You know, I remember I went to the record store and I saw this album, Live After Death. And I loved it just right away. The album artwork I thought was brilliant. And I love to play on words. You know, it's a live album and it's like Live After Death, Live After Death, you know, Eddie coming up out of the ground. I looked at the song titles. This looked like it was going to be heavy and proggy and right up my alley, and I couldn't have been any more on target. I brought the album home, listened to it, and it blew me away. And to this day, still one of my favorite albums. It's got to be the best, if not one of the best all-time metal live albums. Just a tremendous album. And so now at this point in the show, we have left the realm of war and we're entering the realm of heaven, the realm of God, the realm of good, if you want to call it that. This is when the scenery changes and now it looks like they're in a cathedral, and they go into Revelations from the Peace of Mind album, another one of my favorite all-time tracks. And speaking of Revelations, lead singer Bruce Dickenson had one of his own. A few years back, he had a cancer scare, and he documents this in his book too. The very last chapter in the book is called Fuck Cancer. And in this chapter, he documents his battle with cancer. The chapter starts off with him Googling this lump in his neck that was bothering him. And of course, anytime you Google a health condition that you have, it's just a matter, you're just like, how many more months do I have to live, Google? Unfortunately, the news wasn't good for Bruce. He found out that he in fact did have cancer, and the prognosis initially was not looking good. In the book he writes, my chance of survival at diagnosis was, I learned, 60%. I wasn't terribly happy about it, but it was 10% better than 50-50. If, however, my tumor was associated with HPV, my chance of survival leapt to 70%, or possibly as much as 90% as a fit non-smoker. My Christmas present was a phone call from the doctor on Christmas Eve. I was in the supermarket. Good news about the bad news. It's a P16 tumor, which puts you in a whole different percentage for recovery. It was the best Christmas present, short of being told it was all a terrible mistake. So while his prognosis was generally favorable, he wasn't out of the woods yet. You know, you have to keep in mind, at this point, the band had just finished recording their album Book of Souls, and they were looking ahead to their upcoming world tour. He was going to be flying the plane around the world again, but he had to go through some pretty intensive chemotherapy that really took a toll on him. Sleeping, eating, drinking, and talking became very difficult. The pain from all the nerves in my tongue being exposed was intense. My throat was swollen. Gradually, the side effects built up. A mouth ulcer at first, skin breaking out, and weight loss. As it became difficult to feed myself, I was ever grateful for being a singer. One of the first things that had to be in control is the tongue, and I could therefore flatten it, open my gullet, and take a huge gulp of whatever I could manage before the pain kicked in. By the last 3 weeks of treatment, I was on liquids only and could not speak simply because moving my tongue was agony. Slowly, my energy levels dropped. One day, I went to the supermarket, only a few hundred yards. I shuffled around and got halfway back to the house before I realized I could go no further. This was beyond exhausted. It was as if every cell in the marrow of my bones was saying, lie down right now, give up. Well, as you know, Bruce Dickenson doesn't give up. It's just not in his vocabulary. He beat cancer, he got through the chemo, and then he started looking ahead to the next phase of his life, which involved getting back with Iron Maiden, flying the plane that would take them once again around the world. What a roller coaster of a year. Looking back further, what a roller coaster of a life. From the ups and downs of school and university to the longest and fastest theme park ride drop ever, being an Iron Maiden. I have often been asked, would you have changed anything? The answer is a simple no. A different and better question is, have you made any mistakes? And the answer to that one is equally easy, loads of them. Learning to sing and perform is trial by error and fire. Training to fly can be done in a simulator. Learning to be an aviator can only be done with experience, and experience comes with mistakes built into its fabric. Nothing in childhood is ever wasted. The same childlike thrill came over me when I sat in the 747 simulator for the first time. All checks complete, and the first officer briefed. I turned to the instructor with a grin. What does this button do? So this last chapter of Bruce's book really sums him up pretty well. You know, he starts off the chapter curious about this lump in his neck, and by the end of it, he's piloting a plane. And this really speaks to his curiosity, his thirst of life and his ability to go after what he wants. Now, somebody else in the band that we haven't talked about yet is drummer Nico McBrain. And you know, if Steve Harris is the Chris Squire of Iron Maiden, Nico is the Rick Wakeman. He's the guy with the jokes, makes you laugh, and is a lot of fun to be around. And one of the interesting things about Nico McBrain that I remember when I was a kid wondering about is why the hell is his nose so flat? What the hell happened to him? So that means it's time for a Nico McBrain teaser. Why is drummer Nico McBrain's nose so flat? A, he sleptwalked into a wall. B, his best friend hit him in the nose. Or C, he passed out doing push-ups. And the answer is B. Yes, he got into a fight in high school with one of his best friends. And as Nico puts it, he beat the fuck out of me, he did. He broke my nose. It started off with a duffel bag fight, then he clobbered me. We started a slapping fight, and I clapped him one. He hated it. You fucking bastard, and the fist came out. It was after school. Everybody came in the circle. Fight, fight, fight. I wonder where he is today, if he's still with us. You never know. Look what you did. Look where I am now, though. Fuck you. All right, so up next is For the Greater Good of God. Also, The Wicker Man from Brave New World, Sign of the Cross from the X Factor album. That's another one that featured Blaze on lead vocals. And finally, we get Flight of Icarus live from the Peace of Mind album. This is a song that they haven't performed live since, 1986. Now, at this point in the show, more than any other time, I thought maybe, just maybe, they might burn the whole fucking place down. I started looking for the exits just in case, just to be safe. Bruce Dickenson with the flamethrower, badass. Really, really cool stuff here. And Flight of Icarus sounded great. Hope they bring it back for future tours. And this song closes out the heavenly portion of the show before we enter the realm of hell, which was kicked off with Fear of the Dark. Now, not one of my favorite Iron Maiden songs. I never could warm up to this one. But then after that, they follow up with The Number of the Beast. And this is a song and an album that got these guys into a lot of trouble when it first came out in the early part of the 80s, because people took one look at this album cover and they thought, you know, these guys worship the devil. You know, these are Satan worshipers and everything. And I recall this interview with Bruce Dickinson where he addressed this whole devil worshiping stuff. And he basically said, look, the devil's a character in the song. You know, would you burn the Bible because it mentions the devil? You know, it's like, it's crazy. People not going beyond the surface, blowing things way out of proportion. And I experienced this firsthand when I went to go see Maiden when I was living in Nashville, 2013. I went to go see them. They were on the same bill with Megadeth. You want to talk about a great, great show. And when I get to the venue, I'm greeted by, I believe it was the Westboro Baptist Church. Have you ever heard of those guys? These are the same asswipes that go to a gay funeral and they picket it. People are grieving because someone passed away and they're yelling at them, talking about how they're going to go to hell. They're yelling at me, telling me that I'm going to go to hell because I'm at an Iron Maiden concert. I mean, this just goes to show you how ignorance just makes you look like an asswipe. And, you know, shame on these people. You know, for these people that are supposed to be so God-fearing and, you know, like talking about God this and they're the most vile, disgusting people that I have ever come across, you know, and it's just a shame how people twisted this stuff way out of proportion. Now, I will say this, something very strange did happen during the recording sessions for this album, Number of the Beast. The producer, Martin Birch, had to get his car fixed, and when he got the bill from the mechanic, it was for $666. And Martin was so freaked out by it that he went back to the mechanic and told him, listen, I can't pay a bill that's $666. Please change it to $667. And the mechanic was like, you know, you're the only guy that's ever come back and asked that we charge you more. So this brings us to the close of the set with the song Iron Maiden from their debut album. And it was during this song that we talk about another member of the band. Remember I told you earlier how it's the same exact lineup from when I was a kid? Well, they have an extra guy because when one of the guitar players, Adrian Smith, when he left during the 90s. He was replaced by Yannick Gers. And when Adrian came back to the band, they didn't want to let Yannick go. They liked him so much. He's a funny guy. They wanted him around. So they decided, yeah, let's just have 3 guitar players. What's the big deal? Well, the thing about Yannick is that he's very active on stage. He's a very controversial figure, actually, in Iron Maiden. Some people don't like the fact that he just kind of dances around, and boy, does he swing his guitar. He swung it around so much, I'm thinking to myself, this fucking guy is going to put somebody's eye out. Something, I hope that their insurance will cover this. Well, sure enough, at the very last show on the U.S. leg of the tour this summer in San Antonio, Yannick let it slip, and it actually grazed a security guard. So what happens? Yannick gets the guitar back and he starts swinging the fucking thing again. So just a word of advice, word of caution, if you got tickets to go see Maiden, you may want to steer clear of that side of the stage, or else you just never know, you could get a guitar through your teeth. So they close out the show with a 3-song encore, kicking things off with The Evil That Men Do from Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, and then 2 from The Number of the Beast, Hallowed Be Thy Name, and Run to the Hills. And that closes out a simply amazing, mind-blowing set. Great show. You know, if I had any complaints about the set list, you know, one of them would be, it would have been nice to have seen something from Somewhere in Time, one of my favorite Maiden albums, like Wasted Years, my all-time favorite Maiden song. Would have liked to have seen that, but I can understand they've been playing that song, you know, on the previous tours, probably wanted to give it a break. Yeah, they could have done without one of the Blaze Bayley songs, maybe. Fear of the Dark, I'm getting tired of. The song Iron Maiden, I would like to see them swap out some of these songs for some others, possibly. But overall, if you're a fan of the classic era and even a fan of their, you know, post Blaze Bayley era up till recent, then you're going to love this. And so to close this out, you know, Iron Maiden, particularly Bruce Dickenson, represent a lost art, the art of performance and the art of theatrics. You know, Bruce Dickenson reminds me of like a Freddie Mercury. He's the Mercury of metal, you know, knows how to have the audience in the palm of his hand. You know, he knows how to be theatrical and keep things interesting, and he's the kind of guy that you can't keep your eyes off of. And he entertains unlike anybody else in the business, and he's not being replaced. What happens when Bruce Dickinson is done and Iron Maiden packs it up? Who's going to step up and take their place? And so go see these guys. Don't take them for granted. If you like Maiden, if you're curious, go check them out. And I'm telling you right now, you will see the same band that captured my imagination back in 1985, and that's certainly something to celebrate. So what's up next for Iron Maiden? Well, in 2020, the legacy of the Beast Tour continues. Beyond that, there will probably be another studio album and another tour. I've heard some rumblings that they may go out with Judas Priest. That would be really cool, wouldn't it? And let me know what your favorite Maiden memories are. Have you seen this tour? Are you going to go see this tour? Drop it down below. Also, check out the companion playlist to this video. I've thrown in my favorite Maiden songs along with some documentary footage, interview stuff. It's all in there. I'll put a link up to it, and be sure to click like if you like this video. It'll help YouTube get it in front of more fans. Hit that subscribe button too, and I will have more videos coming your way, all right? So stay tuned and take care.